everybody. Welcome to the Cannabis Wiki Conference and Expo 2022 from London, Ontario.
We got a lot of new hot interviews coming up next.
See you in the green room. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Green Room live from the Cannabis Wiki Conference and Expo 2022. Hey, Derek.
Hey, Jackie.
We're still here, day 2. Having a good time?
Yeah, absolutely. There were some great panels today. The diversity panel was great, and that brings us to our next guest here, Ika Washington, founder and CEO of DiversityTalk.
Hello, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being on the Green Room. I've seen you in the Cannabis Wiki studios before, but I've never seen you live on the Green Room.
Yes. That was actually an amazing time.
Oh, I love that. You like our studio is pretty cool, eh?
It's like really lit, and I left my name on the table.
Yes.
As well, you know, the wall.
And I left my name there. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. That's inspiring when we go there and work on the weekends and we look through all the people that have been there and sign the wall and stuff. So thank you. That's an honor for us because right now, like your panel you just came from, the talk is diversity, inclusion, representation. Do you want to touch on that?
Wow, it's such a big topic. It's
huge.
So much. Like, there's so many elements to it, right? So there's just so much you can talk about within like
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
It's a lot of
minutes.
unpacking.
Yeah, and it's just like a lot of vulnerability as well, right? Like, you're in a space and you're like, okay, I can go the textbook route of actually explaining it, but then I have to add a little bit of flavor to it by actually making you guys realize that this is my reality. Like, I'm not just making things up. Like, this is my life. Like, this is the life of my brothers, my sisters, my cousins, etc. So it's just so layered, and it's just like so much you can tap on. That's why I think we had 55 minutes and we went to like 65 minutes, and even then it was like I had a
and
whole
then you
list
could have
of
went
questions.
on.
Yeah, like we could have had the whole day to talk about something like this, right? So
Yeah, and that brings us to the point of your event where people will have that time. We want to touch on that?
Yes. So I am in the works of putting together an entire event or conference of whatever is going to be and, you know, develop out to be. But having these actual conversations, like breaking it down a little bit more, let's talk about restorative justice and using cannabis as an example or a tool to doing so, right? Talking about intersectionality and what does that actually mean in the cannabis space, and talking about like social justice and environmental justice and sustainability. So again, like, you can just see how layered these conversations really are, and how like cannabis is really a tool that we can use in order to achieve certain things in these spaces. And even like the whole aspect of health equity, which is my background, it's like talking about the patient aspect of it, like, you know, and the access and the research. So like, again, can go on tangents, but you know, it's
we
one
like
of those
tangents.
things. Yeah, you know, it's one of those things where it's just such a healthy conversation to have. Especially in safe spaces. And I felt like Cannabis Wiki and the space that you've created is a safe space to have these conversations. And it was just really nice. It just, and the flow and the people that were on the panel just made it so much easier. So it just, yeah, I
like
wait.
hearing that. I hope, you know, that you always feel welcomed at our table and at Cannabis Wiki. I mean, that's my hope sitting here. It's awkward, right? We were talking about, I have a lot of unlearning. I have a lot of unpacking. I'm listening, I'm trying, but I can only come from where I come from, right? And my life experience is very different than yours,
right.
And where I'm from is very different. And to have these diversity talks, and we're very loud and proud about what we're offering at Cannabis Wiki. And sometimes it's uncomfortable for me where I don't know my place all the time, right? Like, it's time to be quiet, and it's time to let you run the conversation and learn. It's my turn to learn, and we learn best when we listen.
No, and
so take the floor.
Yeah, no, honestly, absolutely. And even for me as a Black woman in certain spaces too, I'm sitting here and I'm listening, right? Like, especially when I work with the Indigenous communities and stuff like that, I'm sitting here and I'm like, wow. Like,
wow, you don't have clean drinking water in Canada? That's unbelievable. I thought we were perfect.
Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, COVID-19, no isolation capacity or isolation. Like, you know what I mean? Remote communities can't do tests and you know, or get results within 7 days, and you know, while we're getting rapid tests. So, you know, it's like you're sitting down there and you're just like, wow. Like, I have a lot of shared lived experiences, and you know, there's some parallels and there's some intersections of it, but it's so unique to everybody's experiences. So it is a big part of just being able to know when to be humble and to exercise that that cultural humility and just be like, I am here to actually listen to you, and I just want to know how I can help your community, not take over, but how can I help you to continue what you find that's going to be best solutions for your community, right? So
is that advice, not advice, I don't know how to even say, is that what you would give to like a white woman, like just listen or just open the door, or just like, what is something you could give, like something the simplest person listening to this, someone that looks like me, listening to this and wants to help without without overstepping and without owning it and without making it, what is that virtue signal? Like I can't, anyhow, we could go on how I feel about all kinds of things, and that's not what this is about. So what could you give me that's something simple and easy where I'm not overstepping, I'm not crossing boundaries, right. I'm just helping on my level?
So I guess I'll just really kind of go back to that point of like, help community to get to their goals. Don't overstep. Yeah, don't overstep. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that a lot of our communities have built so much resiliency in order to deal with certain problems. We know what our solutions are for our communities, and sometimes it's the lack of resources as to why we are not able to get to that full solution. So if we are in a space where I can say, all right, as a Black ally to Indigenous communities, for example, or specific First Nations communities, and you need a space to talk about these types of issues, and I have the platform to do it, I'm going to give you my platform.
Okay.
And I'm going to make sure people listen to you. And I'm going to hear as to what I can do within my group and what I can do. So for me, I love policy work. That is my baby. I love research. So I always try to make sure that when I go into certain spaces and I'm hearing from my brothers and sisters, my Indigenous brothers and sisters, I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I understand that policies are written this way, and based on communities, this is what they would like to see. And this is my Indigenous or individual or whomever that wants to talk about it. Go ahead, talk about it.
Go ahead, talk.
Right? So it's really about giving people a platform, because I feel like even in this space, it's like, I think it's only recently that I've been given platforms to speak. I went from being at these events for almost 5 years to now everybody wants me to speak on things. So there's also an aspect of tokenism where you have to be careful. You have to tread lightly, listen to what others people are saying, right? So it's about listening. It's that listening aspect that people don't. Hearing and listening are two different things. So that's
I'm hearing and I'm listening, and you're obviously a very intelligent woman. Aside from, right, like I recognize you're a Black woman. I recognize you're very intelligent and you're very attractive and you're very, like, you got it all going on. I want to know, like, as a friend, as an ally, how am I rubbing you the wrong freaking way and I need to stop? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, how do I, so you've said how generalized we can help and we can, better support, but I don't want to call myself a Karen, but the Karens out there, like, what do we need to fix that? Because there's a lot of that in this industry and in that space that are texting and that are posting and that are sharing that they're doing something, and they're doing nothing other than that Instagram tweet or Instagram post or that tweet. That's all the company is doing. That's all the people at that place. Yeah. Where Wiki, I was joking. I was like, we had a boardroom meeting around some hash, and we came up with this whole inclusion and diversity thing about 4 years ago. And now it's everywhere. Yeah. So Derek won't say, but we did. We were like, how do we do this? How do we do that? We heard Last Prisoner Project. We saw stuff Flower was doing. We said Cannabis Amnesty. And we started to come up with our own ideas and initiatives. COVID happened. And now he's like, have you heard these sort of buzzwords that we're seeing, these words, but there's little action behind, very little action.
It's about follow through. And I think that's the biggest thing, the follow through. Like, people are going to know when it's performative. It's very evident. Like, you know what I mean? It's your very standard tweet with the, certain language, with the certain key terms and the buzzwords. It's really and truly about follow through. Like, we know who is just using Black Lives Matter to just get attention. We know who's going to be putting Every Child Matters. It's about follow through. So it's really about, like, I can see the work.
Okay.
I know how to identify that.
Right.
I know who's about their business and who's talking their talk, you know what I mean, and walking the walk. Like, I can see it. And don't think that nobody else does.
Okay.
We all see it. So it's about follow through. Like if you're going, to be honest, and maybe it's just me, but I rather somebody not even say anything about stuff. Don't say anything if you're not going to follow through. If you're not going to actually try to find
Or
ways.
how about don't say anything and just do it? Like Wiki, like I feel we just do it.
Yeah.
We just keep doing it.
And that's exactly it. Just do it. Like it's sometimes it's so easy. It's so easy to reach out to somebody and be like, how can I support you?
How can I support you?
How can I support you?
And businesses. How can businesses better support other Black-owned business, persons of color, Indigenous business? How can business to business, the collaboration, the community conversation, how do we better do that?
Answer emails.
See, that's as simple as that. Answer our emails.
I don't know how easy it is. Like answer my emails.
That's a really good soundbite there, Ika. Answer your emails.
Yeah, I'll just answer my emails. Like I'm not that scary. I rather companies say I am unable to support you than to just have me lost in their inbox or like dragged to junk. But then you're sitting down at my panel.
Right.
And you're like, oh my God, girl. Yes. And it's just like,
but you didn't answer. See? Okay. I appreciate that. I love this, Ika.
You're not about this life. Like, go home. And you probably had that too, right? With planning this entire event. It's like
on his own.
Diversity. Yeah. We need more Black events and Black-led stuff. And then you have Cannabis Wiki. You're just there and, reaching out.
Show support the Cannabis Wiki. And here we,
And that's why I want to commend you too, Ika, for organizing the panel and keeping it together so that it could happen. I mean, because obviously, this is a Black-owned business and, we're trying to give the platform, like you're saying, for people to speak and, push forward, everybody in the industry. And, it's, people have been hurt so bad that, sometimes they don't make their, throws them off. Yeah. So I'm happy that, you were able to execute and, we want to help push forward your conference and, we'll make sure that we're there. And it's all about community and support and, understanding. Why don't you let our audience know, so you're helping Indigenous, is it in the cannabis space or is it are you in the sovereign marketplace with the Indigenous people or is it more just, well, explain what it is.
Yeah, no. So by trade and by training, I'm a public health worker and consultant. So my specialty is community engagement and health equity work to really address disparities, etc. So a lot of the work that I've done has been focused in nonprofit organizations, especially around Black Toronto communities and Black Canadian populations. But over the pandemic, so over the last 2 years, I've been really focusing on First Nations and remote First Nation communities in terms of COVID-19 pandemic responses. And working in both the Black space and the cannabis in terms of Indigenous spaces and looking at health disparities and just health disparities and realizing that there's just so much work to get done. And then you look at the element of substance abuse, and that's where cannabis comes into play, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where you look at different health and disorders and diseases and stuff. You're sitting there, and as a cannabis person, I'm like, oh my God, imagine we introduced it in this way that could actually help them. But then you think about criminalization, you think about social justice, and that's where I say that it's super layered, right? So when I'm working with Indigenous communities, and I just came back from North Bay yesterday, that's why I couldn't be here for the day one, but
you're here for day two, and then day two's the first the worst, second the best.
Yeah.
that's just a skipping rope song I used to sing. Anyhow, go on.
I know it. Yeah.
Oh, you know it.
Yeah. But yeah, even doing that type of work in terms of you looking at mental health and wellness and looking at substance abuse, and you're like, how can you introduce cannabis to a community that has been so damaged and has so much trauma because of drug abuse? You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's this is where I come from into the space. It's tailoring language, tailoring education, tailoring all these different types of things and making it people aware of this is something we need to focus on. We have to remember that cannabis is a plant, that's a medicine, and we have to think about that when we're introducing or talking about Indigenous brothers and sisters or First Nations communities, that we're recognizing that They have a history of substance abuse. There's stigmatization. There's ongoing abuse in terms of suicides, etc., and going on. So how do we really engage with them into the cannabis industry? Like, we need to talk about all these different things and unravel all these different issues that they're having before we just say, hey, like, more space, like, come.
Right.
It's like, it's layered, especially with Black communities too. Like, how many of them can really and truly say, you know, I'm all good for cannabis, let's go. Like, it's stigma. Like, even within my own family and stuff, I'm sitting there like, what do you do? I'm like, I always say public health first, because I feel like it's a great way to ease into it.
Right.
And then after, they're like, oh, so like, good, nice policy. And I'm like, yeah, and I work in cannabis too. And they're like, oh, so the policy stuff. And I'm like, no, let's talk about the cannabis stuff.
Let's talk about the
cannabis stuff first, you know? So we have to recognize that it's super layered, especially now we're in a niche industry of cannabis. So,
so like, the communities that you're working with in the Indigenous, like, are they, you know, doing their own thing out there? Like, I know they have like a sovereign market where, you know, they're not with the, you know, they govern themselves. So obviously they can set their rules and stuff. How are they navigating that, and or are you involved in that?
So I'm not involved in that. I'm now in sitting back and learning. That's where I'm at right now in that space. And it's difficult. It's super difficult, and I can see the barriers for them, right? Like, they have bigger fish to fry in terms of, like, even just housing, you know what I mean? Or, like, you know, clean water. So it's a lot. In terms of the cannabis, in terms of Indigenous communities and sovereignty in it, it's also a policy thing as well. That's an issue, starting from federal government and the implications of the Cannabis Act and what does that mean for Indigenous communities. It's about funding, it's about resources, etc. So I wouldn't say I'm an expert at it. I definitely wouldn't say so, but I can definitely say that it is so multi-layered, and it's such a unique barrier they're facing. And in some ways we can understand as Black people in the industry, but you know, and women in the industry, but at the same time, it's like, it's super unique. And it, you know, and it kind of goes based on nation, and like, you know, certain communities are doing different things basically, depending on leadership and council and elders. So it's multi-layered, and I really hope that a lot of more people can go out there and actually learn and ask questions. And there's so much to learn. I'm just sitting there, especially with the whole thing in BC with the class action suit,
with
and
all the
you're
different
just,
cannabis
with the different cannabis companies, and you're just sitting there like,
okay,
like, you're just sitting there like, okay, expose yourselves. Let me know who you are. You know, let me know who you are. Let me tell you.
I like that, because that's back to knowledge is power. Once you've exposed yourself, you know who they are, and then you can work within that.
Absolutely.
I'm well versed on. Let me know who you are.
Yeah.
Ika, this is great. How could, like, we could go on for days. We could talk about it forever. How can people find you and reach out to you on LinkedIn, socials?
LinkedIn, Ika Washington, and DiversityTalk. Once you find one, you'll find all.
Okay. When is your next event, or the next speaking engagement, or where we can find you next?
So I should be doing something on July the 3rd for Caravana. And also August 19th as well. August 18th, I'm doing something for RastaFest. So I'm actually doing an education series for RastaFest.
Fun.
Yes, very tailored education. Yeah, tailored education for Rasta community and in Toronto, and being able to go into that space and really talking about how did they get into the cannabis industry with their sovereignty and their religion in terms of cannabis, and, you know, back home and exporting, etc. So we're always doing.
That's fun. That's interesting.
We're always doing stuff. So just keep connected with me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, Facebook, anything, and you'll find all that information.
Thank you for doing all this. You're pretty inspiring, powerful.
Thank you.
And I mean, we're not supposed to say ageism or whatever, but I'm old, you're young, and this is amazing. It's very hopeful for the future, that's for sure. So thank you for joining us on the Green Room, Ika.
Of course,
and
thank you
really
for
look
having
forward
me.
to seeing you again.
Yeah, of course, always. You guys are family.
Peace.
Boom.